A Korean billionaire stayed late at his own restaurant one night and heard a dishwasher in the back stairwell begging on the phone not to let her little brother be taken away because she couldn't pay his medicine bill. She thought she was alone. She had no idea the man who owned it was standing 3 feet away, and that the next thing he did would change both of their lives forever. If stories like this are exactly why you love storytelling, make sure you're subscribed. And before we begin, drop crown in the comments. By the end of this story, you'll understand why this changed everything. Halcyon on Pine had gone dark for the night. Chairs stacked, the last dish machine humming in the kitchen. Michelle Harper sat on the concrete steps of the back stairwell, still in her apron, knees pulled to her chest, phone shaking against her ear. "Auntie, please, don't let them take him," she whispered. "If the school calls child services on us again over this, I don't know what happens. I just need one more paycheck. I can make the payment, I swear. Just please don't call anybody yet." Her aunt's voice crackled back, tired and scared. "Michelle, baby, the school already flagged it once because Jalen's inhaler prescription lapsed. If it happens a second time, they're required to report it. I can't keep telling them it's handled when it isn't." "It is handled," Michelle said, voice cracking. "I'm handling it. I always handle it." She didn't know that Kim Tae-hyun, the man whose name was on the awning outside, had come down to grab a forgotten folder and stopped cold at the sound of her voice. He didn't move to leave. He didn't know what to do with the sudden weight sitting in his chest, listening to someone hold an entire family together with a whisper. When the call ended, Michelle wiped her face, straightened her apron, and walked back to finish the last rack of dishes like nothing had happened. Tae-hyun stood in the shadow of the stairwell, watching her go, and asked himself a question he hadn't asked in a long time. When was the last time he'd actually paid attention to someone? He didn't know her name yet, he didn't know her story, but he knew this much: most people crumble and stay down. She crumbled and picked the sponge back up. He told himself that was the end of it. It wasn't. Over the next week, Tae-hyun found small reasons to be at the restaurant more than usual. A supplier meeting that could have been a phone call. Inventory he didn't actually need to check himself. And each time, he noticed her. He watched her hand off half her own lunch, still wrapped, to a man sleeping near the delivery entrance, then wave off his thanks like it was nothing at all. He watched her step in front of a manager who was about to write up a shaking new hire for dropping a tray of glassware, saying quietly, "That one's on me." Before the girl could even open her mouth, he saw her find a wallet thick with cash, wedged under a booth cushion, and walk it straight to the host stand without so much as opening it. And late one night, long after her shift had technically ended, he found her still in the kitchen, helping Loretta, 61, arthritis in both hands, finish the last of the pots so the older woman wouldn't have to stay another hour alone. By the end of that week, he'd stopped pretending to himself that he was only stopping by out of concern. The phone call had told him she was drowning. Watching her had told him exactly who she was underneath it. Michelle was leaving through the alley door after a double shift when a car idled at the curb and the back window rolled down. "You're the one who closes on Thursdays," Tae-hyun said, stepping out. Not cold, not commanding, careful. Michelle froze. Owners didn't usually know the dishwasher's schedule. "Is something wrong, sir?" "No." He held out a plain card, his name on the front, an address on the back. "I have a position open, different kind of work. Come to this address Saturday evening, 7 o'clock, if you're interested." "What kind of position?" "One that pays you enough that you don't have to choose between rent and your brother's medicine," he said simply. Her breath caught. "How do you—" "I heard you in the stairwell, that first night. I won't pretend otherwise," he said gently. "But that's not why I'm standing here." I've been watching you all week. The food you give away, the blame you take for people who can't afford to lose their job, the wallet you never even opened before turning it in, the nights you stay late so Loretta doesn't have to finish alone. The call told me you were struggling. Everything since told me exactly who you are. She stood there, long after his car pulled away, the card trembling in her hand, torn between hope and the instinct that told her nothing this good came free. She almost threw the card out twice. What if it was a trick? What if she showed up and made a fool of herself? But then Jalen asked her at dinner if they were going to have to move again, and by Saturday she'd made up her mind. She wore her one good blazer, tied her hair back, and took 3 buses to an address that looked like it belonged in a different city entirely. Tall gates, quiet gardens, warm light glowing behind tall windows. An older woman answered the door before she even knocked, kind-faced, sleeves rolled up like she'd been in the middle of something. "You must be Michelle. I'm Odessa. I keep this house running. Come on in, sugar. You look half frozen." Inside smelled warm and lived in. Odessa led her to a small sitting room with 2 chairs already set. "Mr. Kim will be down shortly. Make yourself comfortable." Michelle sat with her hands in her lap, heart pounding, wondering what a man like this could possibly want from someone like her. But underneath the nerves, something small and stubborn had already started to hope. The door opened. Taehyun walked in wearing a plain sweater instead of a suit, and without the polish of the restaurant he looked almost shy. "Thank you for trusting me enough to come," he said, sitting across from her. "I wasn't sure I should. I wasn't sure you would." He poured her tea. "I want to offer you a live-in position, helping my family's foundation organize records, my father's papers mostly, before we open his memorial archive. Room and board included, and a salary that will cover whatever your brother needs. No more choosing between bills." Michelle's throat tightened. "Why me? You don't even know me." "I heard you that night in the stairwell," he said quietly, "but watching you all week told me everything else I needed to know. I don't want your pity." "This isn't pity. It's a job I need done well, by someone I trust." He held her gaze. "And I already spoke to the restaurant manager. They'll let you go without any trouble if you say yes." Her mouth opened, then closed. "You arranged that before I even agreed?" "I don't do things halfway." She looked down, blinking hard. "I don't know if I deserve a chance like this." "Michelle," he said, his voice low and certain, "stop apologizing for holding your family together. That's not something you should ever be sorry for." Something in her chest, clenched tight for years, finally eased. Odessa walked her down a quiet hallway to a small room with a soft yellow quilt, a writing desk by the window, and a single potted violet on the sill. A note sat folded on the pillow in careful handwriting. "Towels in the closet. Knock twice on the kitchen wall if you need anything. Day or night. Odessa." "This is too much," Michelle whispered. "It's exactly what you've earned," Odessa said. "Rest up. We start slow tomorrow." Michelle sat on the edge of the bed a long time after Odessa left, running her fingers over the quilt like it might disappear. Her whole life fit into one duffel bag, but for the first time in years, tomorrow didn't scare her. She woke before her alarm, disoriented by the quiet, then remembered where she was. By 7, she found Odessa in the kitchen, with 2 mugs already poured. "Sleep all right, baby." "Better than I have in years." The days settled into a rhythm, mornings helping Odessa, afternoons in the study sorting through boxes of yellowed letters and ledgers, each one labeled in careful handwriting. "Personal, keep." She handled every page like it might crumble. "You're gentle with those," Taehyun said one afternoon, appearing in the doorway without her noticing. "They're not mine to be careless with." He knelt beside her and lifted a faded envelope. "My father wrote these during the years right after he immigrated, Before the company had a name, he never told me how close we came to losing everything. He turned it over in his hands. That's why I needed someone patient going through this. Someone who actually reads between the lines. Rain started tapping the windows that afternoon, and somewhere in the quiet, Taehyun noticed her hands moving on their own, fingers twisting 3 loose threads from a frayed cushion tassel into a small, neat braid, without her even looking down. "You do that a lot," he said, amused. "Braid things." Michelle blinked, caught. Old habit. My grandmother did hair for half the block when I was little. I used to sit at her feet and watch. Then she'd let me practice on my dolls, then on real heads once I got good enough not to make anybody cry. She smiled a little. By 12, I was doing braids for neighborhood kids for $5 a head. It's the one thing that always made my hands feel useful instead of just tired. "Show me," he said. She laughed, surprised. "Show you what?" "Whatever you were about to do to that tassel." So she did, quick, practiced fingers working a clean 3-strand braid into the frayed cushion trim, while he watched, quietly fascinated by how sure her hands were, how the tension in her shoulders eased the whole time she worked. "You're happy right now," he said quietly. "I don't think I've seen that yet." "I am," she admitted. Another silence passed, comfortable this time. Then he asked, gentler, "Michelle, have you always been the one holding your family up?" The question hit somewhere tender. "Since I was 19, she said. "Car accident took our parents. It's just been me and Jalen ever since." "And who's held you?" "Nobody," she said simply. "I learned to hold myself." He didn't say anything right away, but something in his face changed. Not pity, something closer to recognition. For the first time, Michelle didn't feel small for having survived alone. She felt proud of it. There was one door in that house that stayed locked, at the end of the upstairs hallway, paint slightly faded like no one touched the handle in years. One evening, she found Taehyun standing in front of it, not reaching for it, just staring. "You can ask," he said without turning. "I didn't want to pry. You don't have to tiptoe around every question with me." He exhaled. "It was my sister's studio. She painted, really painted, the kind of talent that made people stop and stare. She got sick when she was 23. Leukemia. We lost her 2 years later." His voice stayed steady, but distant. "I haven't opened that door since the funeral." "I'm sorry," Michelle said softly, stepping close enough to be present without crowding him. "Some rooms hold memories. Some hold grief. Sometimes it's both at once." He looked at her, surprised at how simply she understood it. "I don't paint," she added, "but if you ever want that room dusted, or just someone sitting quietly with you while you open it, I'm here." Something in him loosened, like a breath held for 2 years finally let go. "Thank you," he said. "You don't know what that means." They stood there while the rain kept time against the windows, and for a moment, neither of them was a billionaire or a live-in assistant. Just 2 people who understood exactly what it cost to carry something heavy alone. A package showed up on the porch a few days later, addressed to her, in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside, a proper stylist's kit, edge brushes, silk-wrap scarves, a full case of quality hair products in every texture. The card read only, "For the hands that hold everyone else together." "I didn't order this," Michelle said, stunned. "I have a feeling you didn't need to," Odessa said, smiling. Taehyun walked in from the hallway, pretending not to notice her staring at him. "You said braiding was the one thing that made your hands feel useful instead of tired," he said. "I thought it deserved better tools than a couch tassel. I don't want to be someone who just waits around to be given things. This isn't a gift," he said. "It's belief." That word stayed with her far longer than she expected. "If you're already invested in this story, Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. And let me know you're still with me by dropping a ha in the comments. Trust me, the best is yet to come. The following week, Michelle asked Odessa if she could use the bright front sunroom on the east side of the estate, just beyond the main entrance. Within days, folding chairs and a mirror salvaged from storage filled the space, and word spread through the neighborhood fast. The first Saturday, 3 girls from down the block showed up just to get their hair done for free before school pictures. By the 3rd week, it was a dozen girls and their mothers, laughter and gentle scalp tugging, and somebody's playlist bouncing off the walls of a room that used to sit empty. One Saturday, Michelle looked up from a little girl's braids and noticed a woman standing outside the estate's tall wrought-iron front gates. Arms crossed, she stared through the bars toward the bright glass sunroom near the front entrance, watching every braid Michelle finished. She never asked to come in. She never waved. She simply stood there, jaw tight, before turning and walking away. When Michelle mentioned it to Odessa that evening, Odessa's face went carefully still. "That's Renata Cross," she said. "Owns the main house on 5th. Has for 20 years. Trained half the stylists working in this neighborhood, back when there wasn't anywhere else to learn." She paused, choosing her next words. "She's not used to free." Taehyun started finding reasons to walk past that sunroom in the afternoons, watching Michelle talk a shy 9-year-old through her first set of cornrows, showing her how to keep the parts straight, lit up in a way he'd never seen at the restaurant. Something in him kept quietly rearranging itself around her. A local paper ran a small piece on the free Saturday sessions, and how Michelle had started teaching a few of the older girls to braid well enough to earn their own money doing it. A few days after it ran, Michelle was folding towels near the sunroom door when she overheard 2 of the older girls talking low by the window. "My cousin said Miss Renata's been telling everybody, free salons ruin the business for real stylists," one of them murmured. "Says girls like us are gonna put people out of work." Michelle kept folding and said nothing, but the words sat heavy in her chest, long after the girls had gone home for the night. 2 weeks later, a cream envelope arrived, addressed to Michelle, a nomination for the Foundation's annual Rising Neighbor Honor, recognizing people building something out of nothing for their community. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "You did more than you realize," Odessa told her. The gala was held in the Foundation's main hall, string lights strung across the ceiling. Michelle wore a dress she'd altered herself, her hair in a set of braids she'd done the night before, with hands that finally didn't shake while she worked. For once she felt like she actually belonged in the room. Taehyun found her across the crowd and gave her nothing but a small, private smile. Then, just as the host began reading her name for the introduction, Renata Cross stood up from a table near the front, microphone already in hand, before anyone could stop her. A ripple moved through the tables around her before she'd even said a word. A few quiet glances exchanged, a couple of heads dropping toward their plates, the unmistakable look of people who already knew exactly who she was and where this was headed. Renata owned the main house 2 blocks over, and ever since the sunroom classes started, she'd watched more and more of her own junior apprentices drift toward Michelle instead. "Before we celebrate this too quickly," Renata said, sweet-voiced and smiling, "I think people deserve to know what's actually happening over there. I've had 3 clients come to me this month with chemical burns from product used at that so-called studio. No licensed cosmetologist on staff, no inspections on record, just a girl with a comb and a room somebody handed her." A murmur rolled through the hall. Every head turned. Michelle felt the blood drain from her face. None of it was true, but that hardly mattered once it was said out loud, in a room full of people who'd never set foot in her sunroom. Before she could find her voice, Taehyun stood. He crossed to the stage without hurrying and reached for the microphone. calm enough that Renata handed it over before she fully realized she'd done it. "I'll save everyone the trouble of fact-checking that," he said, and the hall went quiet. "Everything she's doing is completely above board. Every student is properly supervised. Every product used meets professional safety standards, and every requirement has been met. I have the documentation in my office if anyone would like to see it tonight." He looked toward Renata, not unkindly. "What's actually happened is that girls from this neighborhood found somewhere that trained them for free instead of charging them for an apprenticeship they couldn't afford. I understand why that might cost someone business. It doesn't make it a scandal." He turned back to the room. "What that nomination letter didn't have room to mention is that Michelle has raised her little brother alone since she was 19, that she scrubbed dishes so he'd never go without, that she built something out of a spare room with her own hands before this foundation ever gave her $1. His eyes found Michelle's. "If anyone still has questions about her character after that, I'd genuinely like to hear them." Nobody did. Silence held a beat too long. Then applause started, hesitant at first, then rolling forward until it filled the entire hall. Michelle sat there trembling, not from shame this time, but from something warmer she hadn't felt directed at her in years. Taehyun stepped down from the stage and simply offered his hand. She took it, and they walked out together into the night air. Outside, the breeze steadied her racing heart. "You didn't have to do that in front of everyone," she said. "Yes, I did," he answered, without hesitation. "I hate that one bitter woman with a microphone can undo months of work in 30 seconds. "She didn't undo anything," he said. "She just showed the whole room exactly what she's afraid of. That's not the same as being right." "I'm just tired," she admitted, "of having to defend something I built out of nothing but effort." "Then stop defending it to people who already decided," he said gently. "Save that energy for the ones who actually see you clearly." She studied him. "Why me, out of everyone you could have helped that night in the stairwell?" "Because you reminded me what it looks like to keep going anyway," he said simply. "After my sister died, I stopped letting myself want things. You walked back into that kitchen and finished the dishes like your whole world hadn't just cracked open. I hadn't seen anyone do that in years. I didn't want to look away." Her breath caught, something warm spreading through her chest. "I'm not trying to rescue you, Michelle," he added. "I just don't want to miss my chance to walk next to you while you finish saving yourself." For the first time, she let herself believe that could actually be true. A week later, Michelle walked into the kitchen and stopped short. An elegant older woman sat at the table, back straight, eyes kind but assessing. Taehyun's grandmother, visiting from out of state. "So you're the one my grandson won't stop talking about," she said, not unkindly. Breakfast was polite, a little careful. Afterward, his grandmother asked Michelle to walk with her through the garden. They walked in silence for a while, before she spoke. "I watched that boy lose his sister and close every door in himself after," she said. "I need to ask you something. For his sake, not mine. Are you here because he was the first person who saw you when you needed it? Or because you actually love him?" Michelle answered without flinching. "I came here because I had nowhere else to go, and he offered me a way to keep my brother safe. But what I found here wasn't rescue. It was the first place I didn't have to apologize for being tired. I don't love him because he helped me. I love him because he never once made me feel like a burden." His grandmother studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly, something softening in her face. "I believe you." Before she left that afternoon, she added, "I hope you stay, not because he needs looking after, because he finally let someone all the way in, and that hasn't happened in a very long time." Months passed. The little sunroom sessions outgrew their walls. Taehyun's foundation covered the permits and the build-out. A partnership with the City Community College's cosmetology program came through to certify the coursework. and 2 licensed instructors signed on to teach alongside Michelle. With Odessa running the books, an old storefront 2 blocks away became something new: Crown Beginnings, a community hair studio and cosmetology training program where teenagers could earn real styling certifications, all under one roof. At the grand opening, neighbors and city officials and every girl who'd ever sat in that sunroom chair gathered together, the buzz of blow dryers drifting into the street. Michelle gave a short, honest speech and stepped down to find Taehyun already waiting. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I'm proud of us," she said back. He reached into his coat and opened a small velvet box, a simple ring, understated, exactly the kind she would have picked herself. "You don't owe me anything, Michelle. Not love, not gratitude. But if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life building things with you, instead of just watching you build them. Will you marry me?" She didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, eyes steady, and said, "Yes." Applause rose around them, but all Michelle could hear was her own heartbeat, steady and sure, keeping time with a future she never thought she'd get to have. She rested her forehead against his and understood, finally, that she wasn't the girl crying in a stairwell anymore. She wasn't carrying everything alone. She was a woman who'd built something real with her own 2 hands, and finally let someone build it beside her. It all started with a girl whispering into a phone on a back stairwell, certain nobody could hear her. She had no idea that small, exhausted whisper was about to open a door into the rest of her life. Because sometimes the softest hearts are the ones strong enough to keep rising, even while they're breaking. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Afro K-Drama Cinema for more unforgettable stories like this. And tell me in the comments, which moment hit you the hardest, and why? I read every comment, and I genuinely love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you in the next story.